Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Sylvia Herzog. I'm director of the Charcoal Project. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, The Global Charcoal Trade and Its Impact on Wood Energy Resources in Africa. We're very excited to have this distinguished panel with us today to discuss this. Just before we get started, and I turn it over to our moderator, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping items. Oops. First of all, just please remember to keep your microphone on mute. We should have a fairly large group today, so we don't need the extra distractions, as well as your camera. That will improve everyone's connection. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session, so please, you're welcome to post your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them. Any questions we don't get to during the session, we will answer with our follow-up information. We will have follow-up information. The presentation is being recorded, and we will also send you the slides that are used today, and then also the questions that were not answered during the time period. And feel free to share our presentation and the links with your colleagues so that we can spread the word on these important topics. Quickly, who is the Charcoal Project? For those of you who are new to us, we are a US-based nonprofit that promotes better fuels and technologies and policies for people who depend on charcoal and other solid biomass fuels for their everyday cooking and heating needs. We do that mostly by supporting clean energy entrepreneurs through our Harvest Fuel initiative. We also provide online resources to stakeholders in the sector, like this webinar here, and we advocate for sustainable practices for wood fuel and charcoal consumption and production. If you want to hear more about us or read about our entrepreneurs, you can find us at www.charcoalproject.org. With that, I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Kim Chaix, who's our founder and the director of the Charcoal Project, which he started 10 years ago. And the floor is yours, Kim.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you everyone for joining us, and especially our distinguished guests. Yes, I might have started the Charcoal Project 10 years ago, but I really do see this as a joint partnership because, Sylvia, you joined me shortly after we started. I don't want to take too much time with this overview of our topic today. But I do want to thank the presenters who have agreed to join us here today to discuss this topic. We have with us Dr. Svetlana Proscurina from LUT University in Finland, and she has researched and written scientific papers, research papers on tracking the flow of the global charcoal trade. So we're excited to hear about some of these findings and what she's discovered in the process of researching this topic. We also have with us Johannes Zahnen, Senior Forest Advisor from WWF. And he is also researched the topic of the global charcoal trade, and especially how charcoal is introduced into the European market, and the findings that they have discovered are quite significant. Do we have Volker here on the line? Volker Haag is a wood anatomist from the Thünen Institute of Wood Research, and he has also written scientific papers that make it possible to identify the sourcing of charcoal, whether it comes from and what species of trees it comes from and where it comes from. And that is fascinating tool, obviously, for the purposes of being able to determine the composition of the charcoal that people buy in their stores in any country, really, because this technology works everywhere. But it's especially relevant in certain societies that have laws on the books that regulate the trade in wood products. So we'll hopefully hear more about this shortly. And then we have Chikezie Omeje. He is data and science journalist, and he has also written extensively about this topic, and in particular from his native Nigeria's perspective. And so this is it'll be very interesting to hear from his own research and discoveries of how the charcoal trade in his native Nigeria, where does it come from? Where does it go? How does it affect the country and its society? So this is a great panel that we have with us today. Just really quickly about the charcoal project and how we got started. We got started essentially because we didn't know anything about charcoal, and we happened to stumble or meet someone who ran the director of a national park in Africa, the oldest and most biodiverse park in the continent in Eastern Congo. And when I asked him what the greatest threat to the park was in the long term, he said charcoal. And that completely surprised me. As someone who had been working in the environmental field or communications for several years, I had never understood or known that charcoal could play such a role. In the Eastern DRC, it was at the time $40 million a year industry that funded irregular armed groups, the same groups that have killed more than 150 rangers in 10 years in that park. So it's really a serious topic with big money and tremendous repercussions. And that's why we founded the Charcoal Project. More than that, the charcoal trade in sub-Saharan Africa is known to be worth several $billion and employ millions of people. And 80% of the population consumes the fuel. So it's huge impact, but we also know that this is an issue that is increasingly having a broader impact because of the climate crisis, because we need tropical forests to remain standing. And unfortunately, a lot of this charcoal that is produced and sourced in parts of sub-Saharan Africa are not sustainably sourced. And one issue that 10 years ago was not on our radar screen was the global charcoal trade. And that's what we're going to talk about more today. The exports of charcoal to industrialized societies in the global north was not an issue that we were really focused on 10 years ago. And over the past decade, this trade has increased. And what that means is that puts more pressure on forest cover in the tropics. So serious issue. So let's just quickly talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the global charcoal trade. So next slide, Sylvia. First, we're going to talk about the bad. The bad is, we'll go with the facts. So next slides. Yeah. So fact number one, we don't know how much the global charcoal trade contributes to, or the combustion and sourcing, the whole supply chain contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. From this report from last year, it could be 2%, it could be 7%. We just don't know. And when we are in the decade facing the greatest, most existential of threats, and where things really need to change, not to know whether it's 2% or 7% really speaks to, at best, a lack of investment and curiosity in what the role is of charcoal, and at worst, just negligence on the part of those who are trying to find solution to the climate crisis. So we urgently need to figure out where between 2 and 7, maybe it's more, who knows, these numbers really end up. Fact number 2 is sad and pretty self-evident. Again, it speaks to the fact that in the 10 years since we started the Charcoal Project, things have gotten worse. This is very obvious, and the science is there. The impacts are being felt increasingly. The impacts of the climate crisis are affecting those who have least contributed to the climate crisis. And then, fact number 3 speaks to the issue I mentioned earlier, which is the growth of the global trade in charcoal. So this is something, of course, I hope our panelists will be able to discuss in greater depth. Next slide, please. So again, briefly, next slide, thank you. The global trade is growing and it represents big bucks. The problem here again is that those countries who are talking about leading on the climate change and the climate crisis are also societies that are driving some of this global consumption, and that needs to stop. It needs to be reconciled. We're basically eating our carbon offsets or our carbon sinks as a side to our grilled hamburgers and grilled sausages in the north, and that's just really ironic, especially since charcoal consumption in the global north is not really a necessity. It's more of a luxury or a leisure activity. It's not like in sub-Saharan Africa where it's very much primary fuel. So this drives greater pressure on populations in the developing world, and this is just unconscionable in our view. But this is not a reason to exonerate completely nations in the developing world. I mean, because charcoal in general is not recognized as part of the fuel matrix in many nations, it's ignored. And what you end up with in many countries is a hodgepodge of regulations that ultimately may benefit a few people and hurt a lot, and hurt the country's social and environmental fabric. Next slide, please. And then let's talk about the good, other way. And one more. Okay, so the good about this issue is that there are solutions, and we know what the solutions are. They are not that hard to implement. They really are not. The global charcoal trade, first of all, there are regulations in Europe. Companies and nations have legislation that requires them to be responsible for the impact across their supply chains. And so, it would not be that hard to extend that to charcoal. And I look forward to hearing our guests' views on this issue. Again, on the national level, we need to recognize charcoal for what it is. It's going to be around in the developing world as a primary fuel in sub-Saharan Africa for the next 10 years, 20 years perhaps. And the longer we stop addressing it, the more we miss out, not just on having a sustainable ecosystems and societies with access to fuel, but also on economic opportunities. Charcoal doesn't have to be a dirty fuel and can be produced and managed in a way that results in net zero source of fuel, of biomass fuel. Better science and technologies. Again, we desperately need a concerted effort to really look at this topic. There's a lot of institutions, there's talking some governments and some developing agencies, but there really isn't a coordinated approach to this, as there is, for example, for the clean cook stove sector. We don't have that for charcoal. And I think it's high times that we did have more of a mechanism to address this on a large scale across nations and across economies and societies. And finally, we know that large scale investments need to happen. More clean cook stoves would reduce wood fuel consumption in sub-Saharan Africa. That is good. Better charcoal kiln technology that produces more energy dense charcoal, and investments in energy forests too. All these could be solutions that are within our reach right now. And so I hope that we will have an opportunity to discuss investments that need to happen. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Svetlana, Dr. Proscurina, who has done some interesting research, and Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, I would like to say a few words about charcoal. Can you put another slide? Or I can share my screen. You already share it. So can I share it my screen or you will present my presentation?
Svetlana, go ahead and share your screen. And then
Okay,
I'll unshare at the end if we have the problem we had before.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Well, I'm Svetlana from Lappeenranta-Lahti University of Technology, and I'm doing research about bioenergy and not very deeply about charcoal. About 5 years ago, I participated in interesting project. It was about international trade of different solid and liquid biofuels. And within this study, we tried to find out a new possible biomass product that can be traded. And charcoal was one of them. It is interesting, as already said by Kim, that charcoal is not a new product as well, but it is new in terms of trade. And we find it some trade of charcoal between countries. As you can see, this picture was done within the study, Global Biomass Trade for Energy, part 2. It is a research publication. It is available in the internet. You can find it. The most interesting that Malaysia is one of the big countries in terms of trade of charcoal. And Malaysia exports charcoal to China, to Japan. Also, we can see trade from Namibia to South Africa, from Nigeria to Europe, to India. And also we can see some trade of charcoal from Mexico to Canada. Sorry, I'm not listening.
Go ahead, Svetlana. Someone accidentally unmuted. Just keep going. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this picture is very, very basic, is very approximately, and it is important to say that there is this net trade. It means that, for example, some trade between Canada and United States and export and import, and this 10, it means 10 kilotons. It is a difference between export and import. And of course, this picture was done from official statistic for our start and trade map. And we think that in Africa, of course, there are a huge amount of different trade streams, but it's not officially recorded in official statistic. And in the European Union, it is about 1 million tons of charcoal is traded within Europe, and some part can be from other countries, and some part can be produced within European Union. I tried to find information what we can see at the moment, and finally recorded world production of charcoal was around 51 million tons in 2015, and 2 years ago it was 54 million tons. Documented export of charcoal was around 2 million in 2015, and in 2019 it was about 3 million tons. In Africa, production and export of charcoal is about 35 million tons and about half of million ton in 2019. In Asia, production and export of charcoal is about 10 million tons and 1 million ton respectively. So as you can see, the future production of charcoal, of course, in Africa, and consumption of this charcoal is also in Africa. Import of charcoal slightly increased from 1 million to 1.2 million in Europe, but I think it is very small amount of increase, because if to compare, for example, with wood pellets import increased significantly during the last 10 years, and for charcoal it is not a big difference. And Europe itself doesn't depend on charcoal very significantly, because it is really small amount. Dependence on charcoal or firewood to be highest in Africa and Asia. Some African cities are almost completely depends on the charcoal for cooking. For example, in Congo, about 90% of residents depends on the charcoal. I think it is quite understandable. And from which countries charcoal goes to Europe? Firstly, it is Ukraine, then Nigeria, and Cuba. I find it interesting that in Ukraine, there are a lot of debates about charcoal, and it is related to illegal logging in forest, and also some corruption issues in all aspects of supply chain of charcoal. In Nigeria, we can see high rate of deforestation, of exploration of forest, and charcoal production very often is related to illegal. Paraguay also have similar problems with deforestation and corruption. Who imports charcoal in Europe? First, it is Germany, then Poland and France. And Poland is the largest country that produce charcoal and export to other countries of European Union. And Germany is #1 as an import country of charcoal. And it is interesting and important to understand that charcoal can be utilized for different purposes in European Union, and not only for energy. It's also one of the difficulties to calculate it, because charcoal can be utilized for metallurgy, shipbuilding, for chemicals. So it is quite difficult to say how much really charcoal is utilized for energy, for example, in Poland. And if you're interested in this, you can find a study by Zahnen et al. They did a very interesting and good report about charcoal in European Union. Here is my contact at the end. You can find me in a ResearchGate, some publication about bioenergy, about the bioenergy market and economy, profile in university, link to doctoral thesis, and maybe fortunately for you, my doctoral thesis is not about charcoal, it is about bioenergy itself, about some economical, environmental issues, social issues, and it covers different solid and liquid biofuel products. And charcoal is one of the interesting products in terms of study, but it's not fully covered in my study. Here is all from my side. Thank you for your attention. I'm welcome for any questions and cooperation with some people from different organizations.
Great. Thank you, Svetlana. I'm going to stop your screen share and ask Volker to share his screen so Johannes and Volker can jump in. And just so you know, we're going to hold all the questions to keep all the questions in the chat, and then we'll answer them all at the end.
So if I did everything right, you can hear me already and you can see the screen already. Is that correct?
Yes, all good. Thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Dr. Volker Haag from the Thünen Institute of Wood Research, and thank you very much for the invitation. My colleague and me, Dr. Johannes Zahnen from the WWF, are given a short, brief presentation about the anatomical identification of charcoal and briquettes and developments in the charcoal trade, because we did a lot of research the last 5 or 6 or maybe 7 years in the charcoal trade. And Svetlana already showed a few of our images and results in her presentation. You could see the SARS 2020 analysis of European charcoal market is a result of the European charcoal trade that was published in the IAWA journal. So let's go ahead. As Kim already mentioned, there is a particular challenge that lies in the identification of charcoal and briquettes. As with just by the way, I'm working for the Thünen Center of Competence on the origin of timbers, and my daily work is wood identification, not just charcoal. So everything that is made of wood, also plywood, pulp and paper products, whatever. So, but in the example of charcoal, as with processed timbers, certain characteristics such as the order, the color, and the specific weight can no longer be assessed. In addition, the production of microtome section, thin sections for that you use for the microscope, cannot be prepared because the woody tissue is strongly decomposed by the charring process and has become very brittle. And therefore, we developed a special method, a special technique that we call the 3D reflected light microscopy. With that, you can uneven surfaces that you have with charcoal, because the only thing that you can do with charcoal is break it, and then you have uneven surfaces. And with this technique, the surface is digitally scanned. In the first step, you have a 3-dimensional representation that is converted into a 2-dimensional image in a second step, as you can see here within the example of oak for the anatomical specialists who have already seen that this is oak. And in that context, we made a big European investigation of 11 countries, representative countries of the north in Europe and down in the south. So we had, for example, Norway, Spain, Swiss, Italy, Denmark, Ukraine, the Netherlands, and so on, just to give you a small view about the countries that we investigated. And here in very short, a few, the main results. This is an image that was published from the Nature magazine in a newsletter from them. And the main results are that the high resolution study indicates the proportion of different European timbers compared with that of timbers from subtropical and tropical regions. As you see, there are main difference. The share of tropical and tropical species surprisingly high in Europe, with 46% in the average, but far over 60% in Spain, Italy, Poland, and Belgium. The study shows that comparing the results for charcoal received from these countries, there is an inversely proportional relation of certified products and products with timbers from subtropical or tropical regions. In the charcoal consignments from Switzerland, for example, the share of timbers from subtropical and tropical origin is only 13%, whereas of products of certified products is about 60%. So here we have Switzerland. In comparison, material received from Spain, the proportion, here we have Spain, the red one is subtropical and tropical wood, is far over 60%, whereas the certified proportion is extremely small. And if you view very exactly, the very small number of from sustainable sources is incorrect or incompletely labeled to nearly 100%. So a careful check of the declarations of the packagings in Europe see that the information of the origin revealed alarming evidence. Only 25% of the consignments examined provide information on the bags with regard to the processed wood species, and well over half of such declarations were incomplete, incorrect, or incomplete. So this, in very, very brief, about this investigation, about our investigation, and now we go on with Johannes.
Thank you, Volker. So Volker already mentioned that they are able to find out the species within charcoal, pieces of charcoal. And when we learned what they can do in the lab, we started to buy products from the market. For example, in 2080 from the German market, and we found from 36 products, nearly 90% with wrong declarations on the species or origin. 11% were declared Europe, which is not very precise, as several of the charcoal producers, they include Ukraine in under the label Europe, which is just a little bit foggy for the consumers. And I will talk about Ukraine later on. From WWF perspective, we evaluated about 60% or 61% as coming from high-risk sources. And we found in Germany 42% coming from tropical or subtropical countries. Next slide, please. So when we found these results, it was quite surprising for us to find 42% products with tropical species in the German market. We started to check the import statistics from Germany, and we found, well, there's not much import from tropical countries. So where is the tropical products coming from? And then we checked our most important country for charcoal imports, which is Poland, and we checked the import statistics from Poland. And then we found, wow, 33% from the charcoal in Poland is imported from Nigeria. And we confronted some of the companies with the results. In the beginning, they denied that they're importing from Nigeria, but in the end, they said, yes, it's true. So this seems a real problem to us. In 2018, I came in contact with the environmental ministry in Nigeria, and I was told that they just finished a forest inventory and found that much more forests already disappeared to what they expected. And they told me, well, to our understanding, most of the charcoal production in Nigeria is illegal. So Europe, please help us. That was the message sent from Nigeria at that time. But you need to know that charcoal is totally unregulated in Europe. So charcoal is not listed under the European timber regulation, which means you're allowed to import and trade illegal charcoal from other countries. Nobody will care about. And so we run, Volker already talked about, we decided to run a charcoal market survey on several European countries, just to better understand what's going on. If you look, before we jump to the next slide, if you look to the import statistics from whole Europe, it was just one back, Volker, sorry. So you can see that Nigeria, in the end, it's still 20% if you look at whole Europe. Then we have another 22% from Ukraine, which is another country with a very high rate of illegal logging, organized crime involved in the charcoal trade. Then we have Paraguay as another important source of charcoal in Europe. And Paraguay is similarly risky compared to Nigeria, because in 2018, the president published a president decree that allows 100% conversion of forest, which is in conflict with the forest code. It means the legal situation is totally unclear in Paraguay. And even if you buy legal charcoal, at least it's forest destruction. Sorry. So next slide, please. And this is the Can you hear me? Sorry.
Now we can hear you. Everybody muted all of us, I guess. So go on. I can hear you. I guess the rest of the world even so.
Okay. Well, how much did you miss?
Just a couple sentences. Just start from the slide. Sorry. A little.
Okay. So this is the results from the market survey WWF run together with the Thünen Institute and several European countries. And again, we were shocked in the year 2020. More than 50% of the products we checked contain tropical species. And we have seen the statistics from Europe, so it's a high likeliness that most of it originated from Nigeria, maybe Paraguay. And we calculated if you sum up all the risky countries that export charcoal to Europe, we end up with 1.6 to 6 million cubic meter roundwood equivalent coming from high-risk countries, maybe illegal. So it's really a topic. It's relevant for the EU, but as I mentioned, it's still not regulated. It's possible to import and trade illegal charcoal without any problem. And well, some of the countries taking advantage out of it, just buying the cheapest. We talked to companies in Europe, charcoal traders, and they just informed us that most of the retailers, they only ask for the cheapest price and nobody is asking for legality because it's not under the EU regulation. And we found products even labeled with no tropical species, and Volker found only tropical species in the product. So it's there's a need for action, I would say. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your attention. So I stop sharing and say bye.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Volker. Thanks, Johannes. That was great. Chikezie, you want to share your screen now?
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Chikezie, we can see your screen now.
Okay.
And for those who don't have their glasses on, the left-hand column says 2007 and the right-hand column says 2017.
Okay, so I will just start. Hi, everyone. My name is Chikezie Omeje. I'm a journalist. I'm a freelance journalist. And since this year, I've been reporting around illegal charcoal export from Nigeria. like Johannes rightly said, the Nigerian Ministry of Environment banned exports of charcoal in 2018, but surprisingly, the export of charcoal has been increasing since then. So my investigation has been around finding out who are the people exporting the charcoal, the role of the regulators, and then the countries that are importing this charcoal. But let me start with this data. I'm really, when I saw this data, I was really worried because as in 2007, according to the Green Little Data Book of the World Bank, Nigeria's forest area was 12.2% of the total land mass in the country. Nigeria is about 923,000 square kilometers. And then by 2017, 10 years later, the forest area was just reduced to 7.7%. So currently, if the pace of deforestation has continued, we'll probably be hovering around 4 to 5%. And if it continues this way, probably in next 20 to 10 and next 10 to 20 years, then there won't be any forest in Nigeria. I hope we don't get to that. But let me point out that charcoal is not the only driver of deforestation in Nigeria, because the population is growing, about 200 million people now. And then you have farming, construction, and then timber that are also contributing to deforestation. So according to Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Nigeria is the second largest producer of charcoal after Brazil. That is about more than 4 million metric tons of charcoal in 2018. So when Kim was asking me, how can you quantify 4 million metric tons of charcoal, I really didn't know how to compare that. Like, if I'm to put this charcoal in maybe like in a football field, how many football fields are we going to get to fill up using 4 million metric tons? So if you have an idea to quantify it, maybe you can help me out. But we all know that 1 metric ton is equal to 1,000 kilograms. So yeah, maybe you can help out and throw it in the chat. Like how many 40-foot containers are we going to have when you put 40 million metric tons? So the effort to control charcoal export, because charcoal consumption and charcoal production and consumption in Nigeria is legal, it's not illegal. So, but the effort has been to regulate charcoal export, and because I think that the policymakers think in Nigeria that that is the low-hanging fruit, that it will be easier to control export than to control production and consumption locally. So in 2014, that was in December 2014, Nigeria enacted the National Environmental Control of Charcoal Production and Export Regulations. And then one of the important provisions of this regulation is that exporters of charcoal must obtain permit from the Federal Department of Forestry. And it says that a person shall not be granted a permit for charcoal production without having a reforestation and rehabilitation plan for the area where the charcoal will be derived or produced. So this doesn't apply to charcoal, local charcoal production and consumption. So it's only for those who are exporting charcoal. So they must have reforestation plan. But the problem in this provision is that the producers are different from the exporters. So the people who produce charcoal in Nigeria are mostly artisans, and they live in rural areas. So they don't have no idea about these policies. Most of them don't understand the role that tree plays in absorbing carbon and all that. So they produce, and then the exporters come to the local market, buy from them, and then export to Europe and other countries. So so the exporters have no intention of like having a reforestation plan or doing anything of that sort. They just go to the open market and buy packages, put it in a container, and then export. So the policy wasn't really working that much. Then that was the idea of banning charcoal exports came about. The National Council on Environment is the highest policy-making body on environment in Nigeria. So commissioners of environment from the states, Nigeria is 36 states and capital, the federal capital. So they all come together and make policies for the environment annually. So in 2017, in October, they recommended a ban on charcoal. And because of the 2014 regulation already empowered the Federal Department of Forestry to regulate exports. So the Federal Department of Forestry now stopped issuing charcoal export permits. So you cannot export permits, you can't export charcoal without that permit. So that was what the Federal Department of Forestry. So the country did not come out and say, oh, we have banned charcoal export. But based on this recommendation, the Federal Department of Forestry stopped issuing these export permits, which means that the country has effectively banned export of charcoal. But that wasn't so because what happened next was unexpected. So this was in 2018, just a year after the export ban in 2017. That was probably when Johannes reached out to the Federal Ministry of Environment in Nigeria, and he was told that charcoal export has been banned and other countries should help. But surprisingly, a year after, that is in 2018, became that was the biggest export of charcoal from Nigeria, because export increased by 34%. This is from the UN import and export database Comtrade. So instead of charcoal reducing from when they stopped giving exporters this permit, exports increased by increased by 34% in 2018. So that now brings us the question, why was Nigeria still exporting charcoal when the export has already been banned and the exporters were no longer being given the permit? So this became the question of my investigation that I've started since this year, and I've published 2 investigative articles on this. The latest one was just published on Monday. So I'm trying to put the next one.
You're having problems with the slides?
Yeah, I'll come back to it. Okay.
Suzanne, Sylvia, do you have Chikezie's presentation handy?
Yeah, you can find it on.
No, I think I have it here.
Okay.
Yeah, Kim, if you could pull it up. I wasn't able to pull it up earlier.
Sure. If I'm gonna, should I share my screen then?
If,
Okay, let me stop sharing then.
yeah, go ahead and share
Okay.
your screen.
Okay. Let's see if this works.
Yeah.
Is that working?
Yes, I can see your screen. Next.
Okay, so you tell me when you want me to go to the next slide.
Yeah, next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, next slide. Okay, so yeah, so because no. Please, can you go?
This one?
Yeah. So yeah, so like I said, my investigation was like Nigeria banned exports, stopped giving export permits in 2017, But in 2018, exports of charcoal increased by 34%. Nigeria did not actually capture this export because it was reported by other countries importing charcoal from Nigeria. So my investigation was to find out who were those people exporting charcoal when the Ministry of Environment has already banned charcoal, and how were they doing it? So, and the first, I started finding out, so where should I look for, where should I get the data? And I started talking to a bunch of people, and Johannes was also very helpful because his own research was really helpful in going about this investigation. So let's take, for example, red ember trading. Red ember trading is based in the United States of America and is a subsidiary of Golden Grill. And Golden Grill is a Spanish charcoal manufacturing company. So Golden Grill has been importing charcoal from Nigeria and Colombia. But on its website, it claims that its charcoal is coming from Spain. So you see that, like, people in America consuming charcoal from red ember will be thinking that, oh, this charcoal is coming from Spain, but it's actually coming from Nigeria and other tropical forests. Next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, so another important discovery I made was this Chaix Investment Limited. So it's a Chinese-run charcoal manufacturing company in Nigeria. After the export ban started in 2017, late 2017, in 2018, this company started a massive charcoal production and export in eastern Nigeria. And I did one story about the company in 2019, and then the National Environmental Standard and Regulations Enforcement Agency was forced to suspend the operation of Chaix Investment Limited. But I was surprised that a year later, the factory reopened. Why this is really dangerous to the Nigerian forest is that we have never had this kind of massive charcoal production or having a foreign investor investing in charcoal production and export. The producers have mostly been artisans producing at a very small scale, few bags here and there. But now having a foreign investor building a factory for charcoal production. The factory is about the size of 6 football fields and employ hundreds of Nigerians where they were producing charcoal 7 days a week. And I was like, okay, so why did the Nigerian authorities allow this company to do this kind of massive production when there is already a ban on export? And that is where you begin to see the level of corruption and connivance with the officials who are supposed to enforce the rules that they already put in place. Next slide.
Sorry.
Yes, so another interesting finding from my investigation is Poland. Within the European Union, Poland is actually the biggest importer of Nigerian charcoal up to today. As of 2019, Poland import of Nigerian charcoal was worth more than $11 million, more than any other country. And then within the European Union, Poland is the biggest exporter of charcoal. And there was this Polish company. It was Johannes that actually, told me about this company. It's called Danko, and Danko was certified by the Forest Steward Council. Forest Steward Council is a non-governmental organization that gives companies certificates to say that their products are coming from certified forest. But when when Danko was discovered to be falsifying the origin of his charcoal. So this certificate was withdrawn. But I was surprised that the Forest Stewardship Council reinstated the certificate of Danko. And that is the question we begin to ask, that because we don't have international regulation on charcoal, we don't have international tracking system. And this effort being done by an NGO is not really enough to, prevent companies from importing charcoal from non-certified forests. So they can get their certificate to just be on the good book that their product is coming from sustainable forest. But once you give them that certificate, they go everywhere, they import this charcoal. And why Nigeria is also attractive is that no forest in Nigeria is certified, and it's cheaper to import from Nigeria because the product is available and the charcoal is of very high quality. Next slide. So yeah, so this is just based on my findings, based on my investigations. My conclusion is that a country like Nigeria, putting a ban on charcoal exports and not being able to enforce this ban, I think this is where the global community comes in, because I actually took this picture in January 2020. This is an agrarian community on the edge of Nigeria's capital, and you could see, you could even see the deforestation there. We were there, like these people were just cutting down the trees and then producing this charcoal in this receding forest. So they are hunting for the hardwood trees everywhere, just that they could produce this charcoal. And my thought on this is if we really don't have specific international regulation, a country like Nigeria cannot enforce its ban on charcoal because the officials are compromised, the custom officers are compromised, the regulators are also compromised. And it's also happening in other African countries that have tried to put some sort of regulations. So what we need is, we know that production and consumption is higher locally, but we also know that this export is putting pressure on the forest. And because the exporters make more money from exporting this, so they will continue to incentivize the producers to go on destroying the forest. So for us to help a country like Nigeria, countries in Europe and other high-income countries would definitely have to stop importing charcoal from Nigeria. Because if you allow Nigeria to enforce this policy, then it's really not going to work based on the findings from the investigations I did. And then the biggest threat to the forest is probably not those artisanal producers who have been producing for over the years at a small scale, but having foreign investors building a charcoal factory to cater for a growing international demand for charcoal. So Chief is currently exporting to South Korea, but we don't know where else they will be expanding to, probably Japan, which is the biggest importer of charcoal, and then Germany and other countries. So if they go into this, continue to expand, then there is no way we can stop them in any way. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Chikezie, for that very, very interesting presentation. It is the volumes and the scale and the consumption that you described is on a huge proportions. Just briefly before we switch to the Q&A section of this presentation, you mentioned how to provide a sense of the the volumes that we're talking about. And just specifically here, hold on a second. Okay, you spoke about 4 million. Okay, Nigeria is the second largest producer of charcoal after Brazil, with more than 4 million metric tons produced in 2018 alone, according to the FAO. And so I did a quick back of the envelope calculations to try to visualize what 4 million metric tons looks like. And I may be a little off in my mathematics. So, take that with a grain of salt, my numbers. But this represents roughly about 133,000 40-foot containers, if that is possible. That's a lot of shipping containers, and the largest container ship in the world can hold 7,500. 18,000 of these 40-foot containers, and so roughly we're talking about 7,500 of the world's largest ship. I'm probably a bit off with my math, but the point is that it's a fabulously enormous amount of charcoal, and we're talking about tropical forests. This is Nigeria's tropical forests that are literally going up in smoke and being exported. So very, very alarming and significant numbers. Okay, so we'll turn to the Q&A section. As a moderator, I have the privilege of asking the first question, and my first question, maybe our presenters may have different answers or answers that complement each other, but these numbers that you identified in your research, and you, Svetlana, in particular, about the traffic in the global trade. We hear huge discrepancies in terms of volumes because Nigeria has a ban on exports, and yet there's a huge amount being exported. So there's a lot of a gray market area. My question is, how reliable are these numbers that you have shared with us? What degree of confidence do you have in them that they reflect the actual state of the global trade?
Well, numbers that I presented, it is from official statistic. And I can assume that a huge amount of charcoal, which is traded between countries, is not recorded in an official statistic because it's not according to certification. And also in the chat, it was some questions about certification. And I think it might be one of the reasons why we cannot see some trade between African countries in a statistic, because of it's not certified charcoal. And official statistic might be recorded only charcoal, which just satisfy some requirements for trade.
So if I can push you a little bit more, so your level of confidence in these numbers, I see where you got them from, but the quality of the data that you have, how confident are you that they reflect the actual picture of the global charcoal trade?
Well, this picture was done about 5 years ago. Might be if to do the same picture at the moment, maybe it's a little bit different, and some trade from Nigeria will be with a larger amount of volumes of charcoal, of course, I think. And
Johannes?
of course, in a statistic, always you can see some uncertainties and debates how you can rely on this statistic and what is, how to say, changes from the real picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if I'm to add to the data, I think the data are not does not represent the full picture of global charcoal trade. Take, for example, if you are looking at Nigeria from the example of export from Nigeria, Nigeria is grossly underreporting its exports. So like the UN Comtrade, for example, is voluntary report. Some countries don't even report at all, and some countries underreport. So, and then also looking at charcoal, the HS code for charcoal, some label it differently in export. So when it's charcoal, probably it's labeled differently because they all come under wood exports in HS code, customs, and all that. So what we are seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not the full picture of the full data of the global trade of charcoal, but it just gives us a sense of, you know, what is going on. But that doesn't, for me, it doesn't represent the full picture.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chikezie. Johannes or Volker, do you want to, anything you want to add to that?
Volker, go ahead.
I think this number is just for you. So if the question, very short, the question is just how we label the numbers that we are dealing with or that we produce. We have to differentiate the numbers of the Eurostats, of the analysis from the whole market, and the number that we created by the identification of species. This is more or less just thumb up or thumb down, so yes or no. So they are completely labeled because of, it's just, do we identify species from the subtropical, tropical zone or from the temperate zone? And we can differentiate this very, very sharply. So it is, identification is the number of the species that we identified is goes down to a number of 13 fragments where we have a positive identification. So we did not give it just a try to identify 30 species. From every assortment that we investigated, we have more or less an identified species on family level, genus level, or even species level. So they very hard numbers that we produced.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And I think it was Johannes, a question for you. You mentioned 1.6 to 6 million
Roundwood equivalent.
Roundwood equivalent of illegal background wood or charcoal is entering the EU annually. And what do you know what percentage that represents roughly of all the charcoal imports into Europe?
The charcoal imports into Europe is about 750,000 tons. But the 1.6 to 6 million roundwood equivalent is the calculation back from charcoal to wood. So it means you have to multiply it with between 2 and 10 according to the production that you use. If you have a very modern production site, you need maybe 2 or 3 tons of wood to produce 1 ton of charcoal. If you have a very old-fashioned production system, you maybe need 10 tons of wood to produce 1 ton of charcoal. So this is why we calculated this figure. It's not very precise. This is just an estimation, but it shows clearly that it's relevant. Charcoal is relevant. It's huge. And we think that the EU should take action to stop this huge amount of highly likely illegal wood entering the European market.
Thank you, Johannes. Another question for our colleagues from Germany. How expensive is the technology you used? Is it viable to imagine incorporating this technology into international monitoring of charcoal origin in global trade?
Yes, absolutely. It's not expensive. So expensive. 10 years ago, the only chance to make a microscopic identification of charcoal was with the electronic microscope, and this is really expensive. But the 3D reflected light microscopy that we use The amount for a microscope like this is between $40,000 and $60,000, I guess, something like this. So this is not much for a professional microscope. That's my opinion.
I'm sorry, that number again, what was 6,000 or 600?
No, between 40 and 60,000.
I see. Gotcha.
But,
that would be the cost of the technology.
Yeah, but in comparison to an electronic microscope, this is just a few percent. So this is the cheapest ones are about I guess $500,000, something like this, or 200,000, the very cheap ones. But the time that you need for preparing the charcoal, the gold dust or whatever, the preparation amount is very much higher. The very expensive thing is that there are not so much wood anatomists.
Maybe, Volker, you add, what's the price of analyzing one package of charcoal?
That's approximately $300, something like this.
That's a useful number. Thank you very much. A question we have from one of our participants is, what are the primary uses in European countries of the charcoal that is imported, apart from grilling or leisure cooking outdoors? I don't know who can answer that question.
Well, to my knowledge, most of the charcoal is really for barbecuing, for private purposes, but also for restaurants.
Mm-hmm. And
I also can add that might be some parts goes to metallurgy, shipbuildings, chemicals, some other purposes, not for energy purposes.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what the percentage might be?
Unfortunately, no, and it is impossible to find it in internet. It's always a tricky question, how much really charcoal goes to energy purposes. It's really difficult question, and I think nobody knows. But yes, it can be for barbecue and for different purposes.
And
same to me.
Yeah, okay. And I know Japan was listed as the largest importer of charcoal. And would it be, to the best of your knowledge, for the same purposes? Or is it the case that, very specific use of charcoal for, I don't know, metallurgy or whatever other industrial processes charcoal can be used for? Do anyone know?
I have no knowledge about the Japanese market, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
No informations.
Yeah, I think in Japan and South Korea, they have special meals that are cooked over charcoal. So it's popular. So like white charcoal is popular in Japan and South Korea. So that's why they don't just import from any sources. Like the Chinese-run company that is producing charcoal for export to South Korea in Nigeria is using a particular species. I think it's called dwarf iron red, something like O3, and that is the only species they are using to produce the charcoal. And then so the locals will go into different forests in Nigeria to hunt for this particular species. And then they produce it in a special way. So they cut and grade it and package it in boxes to export. So I Googled, I'm not sure, but I Googled, but it shows that it's used for certain meals, cooking certain foods in Korea and Japan.
Gotcha. Thank you. Sorry. New York sounds of nature in the background. I have a question for Svetlana. Svetlana, in one of your slides, you mentioned in Africa, production and export of charcoal is 34.7 million tons. I think that is now, and about 456 kilotons in 2019. Are you saying that there's been an increase of a very significant increase between 456 kilotons and 34.7 million tons? Is that the correct? Am I reading your interpretation, your numbers correctly, your slide correctly? I'm sorry, I should have mentioned which slide I was referring to.
In slide, it's mentioned that production and export of charcoal. So production is very huge. It is about 35 million tons of charcoal, but export from Africa to other region, to other countries is quite small, half of million ton.
Okay, okay, got it. Production in Africa and then export.
Yes.
Other countries outside of Africa, got it. Okay, it's
yes.
not an increase. Okay, understood.
And Africa produce a lot and consume a lot, and the export is relatively small.
Okay. Here's a question for our colleagues in Germany. What percentage of the trade to Europe is certified as sustainable? And can you speak about a little bit more about the certification schemes that are more or less reliable at this point?
Shall I give a little overview with the image I have and at last?
Sure.
So, want to share the screen again. So I expected that you asked me something about wood anatomy, but I can go back here. So this is the important image. So this is just an overview about the representative countries in Europe that we made. So this is not complete for whole Europe. Maybe we will make a bigger overview in 2025. Then we will repeat the investigation, maybe in a little bit larger scale. But what your question is, what is the amount of certified sustainable products? You can see here in the with the blue color. So that's what I meant with reversible proportions. Like we have a very high amount of certified products, for example, in Norway, and a very low amount here of subtropical or tropical timbers. So I cannot give you an exact number of the average in Europe, but representative here, we see relevant countries, and you see we have high amount of certified sustainable products and very low amount. And the interesting thing is those countries with a very low amount, they have a high amount with incorrect or incomplete labeled products. So I guess that helps, and maybe Johannes can add his thoughts.
Thank you, Volker. That's a very interesting question. Volker mentioned the relation between percentage of certified products and problems or high-risk products. We also found that also certified products showed up with wrong declared species and even charcoal from Nigeria. So we had a little bit of feeling that the fact that charcoal is not listed under the European timber regulation, there are more companies that are willing or open to cheat also the FSC system. So when we found problems in certified charcoal products, FSC started an extra investigation on charcoal in Ukraine and suspended 74 FSC certified charcoal producers just in Ukraine. So one aspect is it's great that FSC run an extra survey and suspended companies, but the other more frustrating point is that it was obviously possible to cheat the FSC system and import charcoal from Nigeria with an FSC label. Yeah, that's the situation.
Got it.
And there, if I have just 1 minute, I would add another important thought. What was, if I have the time?
Go ahead.
We have another very interesting aspect. We started, we have different behavior in the countries where we made these investigations already. So if you have we started with the investigation in 2017, just for Germany and Switzerland. So what you see here, we have very, very high amounts of sustainable products there. And that wasn't the case in 2017. So the thing is that we are hoping for is that we engage the countries to think about their systems and maybe to increase the number of sustainable products.
Thank you for that added thought. One question about this slide that you have up there, Volker, is in Norway, which has a super high rate of certified sustainable charcoal being sold or produced. I want to know, is this charcoal certified by FSC? Is FSC the only certification body that exists? Is there a European body, or how does this certification process work? We understand that there's some doubts that have been cast on the reliability of FSC certification, but are there other schemes that are viable that consumers can rely on?
So, Johannes, do you want to answer? Please, go ahead.
The most relevant certificate linked to charcoal products we found is definitely FSC. And then we have PEFC, and we found other certificates like Naturland, which is a purely German certificate for forest products. From the quality, from all our investigations, from WWF perspective, FSC is more reliable than PEFC. There is more controls and more ambitious criteria. But as told, we also found problems in FSC charcoal products. So that's from our perspective, it's good to buy certified. It's more control, it's more likeliness to buy sustainable, but it's no guarantee.
Got it.
And again, I think the biggest problem is that there is no regulation at the moment covering charcoal. So it's so easy for companies to cheat everything, and there's no consequence.
Got it. I have an interesting and actually important question to ask. And I'm not quite sure who is best placed to answer, but if you have a suggestion, and I also invite our board members, Jenny, who is here coordinating in the back, to perhaps contribute if you wish. But how can we turn what is seen as an environmental crisis into a sustainable development opportunity for forests, people, and the world? Who would like to take a crack at that?
Well, before that conference, I made some notes that maybe link a little bit to this question. I think there is no black and white situation. So charcoal is needed for many people to cook or heating. And the question is how we can turn it into a more sustainable situation. And I think we need definitely regulation on charcoal in many consumer countries. Corruption was already mentioned. So there is a need to better fight corruption, definitely. It's also a question of fairness between Africa and Europe or Northern America. So we need charcoal for barbecue, but many people in Africa need charcoal for cooking, so that's a huge difference. And we need also this is more a regional solution, but we need to check what's the local situation, and maybe there could be a big step forward could be to have more effective cookers that need less charcoal, just to reduce the production. And in some areas where we see forest destruction or even destruction of protected forests, we maybe need to plant plantations just for charcoal production to reduce the pressure on natural forests. Mm-hmm. That's my ideas.
Thank you. That's very interesting suggestions. I think we're coming almost at the end of our time, of our allotted time. I would like to give the other panelists an opportunity to answer that question and from their own perspective. Svetlana, you want to go?
Please, could you repeat?
Sorry. My question was, or the original question was, how can we turn what is, we've talked about mostly from an environmental crisis perspective into a sustainable development opportunity for forest people in the world?
Yes, of course, certification is very, very important, and it can really improve the situation and give clarity how charcoal was created, from which part of forest, and how it is connected to the deforestation, etc. And I think maybe, in my personal opinion, if Europe will see the all certified supply chain of charcoal, where it is from, where it has come from, what is the situation in forest in countries, it can really improve and increase this trade. And of course, as was mentioned before, charcoal is really important for Africa. For Europe, maybe it's not very important fuel, because also Europe is fully electricity energy, and electricity is produced from different fuels and not depends on the charcoal as African countries. And I think, yes, we need a good certification system, and more charcoal should be certified, and a lot of issues with corruption and illegal usage of forests should be raised and open, and more and more people should be open for discussion of these problems, I think.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about certification, we've talked about increased monitoring of the supply chain. From your point of view, Chikezie, you're African, can you tell us how this could represent an opportunity for producers and society in not just Nigeria, but in other parts of the continent?
Yeah, I just think that for us as human beings, old habits die very hard. It's hard to, to kill old habits. Charcoal has been around for years, it's been around for thousands of years. And we are talking about transition to clean and renewable energy. And here we are, we still have an increase in global demand for charcoal. So it's not really like people who are using charcoal in Africa don't have access to other sources of energy to cook their meal. In Nigeria and other African countries, charcoal is consumed in urban areas. And these urban areas, they have relatively stable electricity, and gas is also available for them to cook their meal. And then in the rural areas where you say, okay, the electricity may not be available, they don't use charcoal, they use wood fuel. So it's a question of old habits, refusing to die, and it's just to educate people that, because there is this belief that food cooked over charcoal tastes better than gas and electricity. So if you educate people that what you are doing have consequences, and then if we are losing our forest, and then we're talking about climate change, I think we also need to, I think more education and more sensitization will help a lot. And also climate activists, I also noticed that climate activists are not, talking about charcoal and its contribution to global warming. I think we just need more people to talk about that, so that if you are buying charcoal from, like if you're in America, you're using charcoal, or if you're in Nigeria, in Abuja, you are using charcoal. So you should be also ask yourself certain questions. Is it okay for me to use this charcoal because I want my meat to taste better? Am I also contributing to global warming? So I need like more activists, NGOs need to step up in this direction and educate the people.
Okay, thank you very much, Chikezie. And Volker, we have 30 seconds if you have anything to add to this discussion that has this particular point.
Okay, very shortly, I see a great chance in residual products like NTFPs, non-timber forest products. We don't have to burn all our trees and all our timbers that we use. We can use more and more products, residual products like coconut shell, mango shells, walnut, olive kernels, and whatever. So in very short.
Thank you very much. And that's a great opportunity for us to plug our work at the Charcoal Project. We do have an initiative called Harvest Fuel, where we use other biomass products to produce alternatives to charcoal. So thank you for offering that segue. And apologies, Volker, we didn't get a chance to talk about wood anatomy, but what we'll do is I will do a blog post about wood anatomy and put it on our website. If that's okay with you, we can have a conversation, an interview, and talk more about that. So thank you all the participants and to our to those who attended, who tuned in to this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be circulating answers to questions that were posed that were left unanswered. And I'm going to leave it to Sylvia to wrap things up.
Thanks, Kim. Nice job. Thank you all, the presenters and Kim for moderating, and all the questions that were in the chat as well. It's great to see people engaged and interested in this pretty serious topic. Along those lines of how we ended there with what can be done in the future, you can see that we're continuing our webinar series, which is really focuses on finding more sustainable solutions to the issue of charcoal. And, we have one left this year. We'll be summarizing the results of a large policy study that we're working on charcoal policies in sub-Saharan Africa and their conduciveness to sustainable interventions. That's coming up in December. And then in 2022, we have a number of other webinars that we'll get to, some focused on cook stove, on inequality, on SDGs and supplying refugee settlements, all really good topics. We are open to new ones if you guys have interesting ideas and would like to see us focus on something else. And for those of you who are new, all of our webinars are on our YouTube channel. Just Google the Charcoal Project on YouTube. You'll find all the webinars that we've done so far this year. So thanks again to all of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need more information, or check out our website, and hope you guys all have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.